Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show, HOF Picks. The other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC 302. Let's get into it. We are back after the long weekend off with no UFC, no real boxing. We did have the Misfits card, which was, you're really scraping by when you're watching a Misfits boxing card with two OnlyFans girls boxing it out. But yeah, we're back. UFC 302 with a pay-per-view, 12-fight card. Main event, Islam Makhachev, Dawson Poirier for the lightweight title. Really solid 5-round co-main event with Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa. Excited to break it down for you. What do you think of the card overall?
Yeah, overall, man, I hate that there's only 12 fights, but there's some really good fights on this card, some good prospects too. I'm excited to see, Cesar Almeida, what he's got against another striker finally, and Kopylov, return of Mickey Gall versus Basil Hafez, who I've been dying to see him since he fought JDM, and he just hadn't had a fight. So looking forward to that. Island Perez, Jocelyn Edwards, the women's fight on the card. There's some bad blood and some beef in that one. So there's a lot of sneaky good matchups. Can't wait for it. We finally got fights coming off the break. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, some good matchups. The card, all eyes have been on this card since there was no UFC last week. And they added the Kevin Holland Oleksiejczuk fight there for the featured bout on the main card, which is a good addition. And then other than that, main card's kind of weak, not the best fights you could put together. Definitely not no UFC 300 or even UFC 299 caliber level of card, but it's a decent card nonetheless. I love the feature prelim, Roman Kopylov, Cesar Almeida. That should be a good one. Excited to break that one down and hear what you got from it. But as always, we'll start with the first fight of the night, and that's going to be Andre Lima sitting at -220 against Mitch Raposo. Raposo stepping in on short notice. I think this is the second or third opponent for Andre Lima. Yeah, third opponent for Andre Lima. They just can't find a guy that's able to fight Andre Lima at this point, and they had to go with Mitch Raposo. Raposo, a guy that's kind of been around the UFC, but this is his debut. He fought on The Ultimate Fighter, lost there. Fought on the Contender Series, lost there. And ever since, he's been fighting on the regional scene, beating guys that are not so good. 4-2, 2-0, 7-4. A lot of older guys that if you watch those fights, they don't really look very good. But he is 25 years of age. He's always getting better, but so is Andre Lima, who won his UFC debut last time out. And if you look at the Tapology, it literally says biting. He got bit. Everyone probably knows that at this point. But he did look pretty decent before he got bit, and he ends up with the win. So 1-0 in the UFC for Andre Lima. He comes in as pretty steady favorite here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's actually a really fun matchup because of how well-rounded both guys are. Starting with Andre Lima, he came into the fight against, was it Igor?
Severino. Sever your bicep off with his teeth.
And Severino was a young kid. I think he was 20 years old. Another well-rounded fighter. And I thought Severino was kind of winning the fight. He was landing the timely takedowns. He was landing some big shots as well. But Lima's a guy that if you fight for 3 rounds, eventually he's going to start pouring on the volume. He rips the body well. His striking's really good. He seemed like his gas tank's pretty well in check. He got taken down a lot against Severino and was able to get back to his feet, still fighting with some energy. Had good composure as well, and ultimately obviously wins the fight from a disqualification. And Mitch Raposo, you go and watch his regional scene footage, he looks really good against the lower level fighters and the guys who aren't quite there. Been on the Ultimate Fighter, which he lost to Ludovic Sholinian, and it's not the best loss in the world considering what Sholinian did when he got to the UFC in that stage. And then he loses to Jake Hadley, and Jake Hadley's 2-3 or 2-4 in the UFC now. So unless he's making massive improvements, I think coming into this fight on short notice, he's going to struggle a little bit with a well-rounded guy like Lima, because if you start falling behind in the striking and you look to go for the takedowns, Lima's pretty dangerous with the jiu-jitsu, and he's got a good get-up game too. So eventually you're going to wear yourself out. If Raposo had a full camp, I'd be a little bit more inclined to take a look at him as the underdog here. He's probably a guy that's going to come in here fighting for a lot. This is probably his last chance. He's been on every show imaginable to try to get into the UFC, and now he's finally here. He's got to get a win, or he's going to be one of these guys that's like a 1 or 2 fight loss, and he's going to get cut. So I like Andre Lima here for the pick. I don't like the price necessarily. I just think Lima, he's not going to be deficient anywhere in this fight. He's going to have skills at every aspect of mixed martial arts that could either match Mitch Raposo or even be a little bit better. So Raposo is going to march forward with the striking. He throws bombs. He's pretty good there. He'll mix in the takedowns. I don't know if he's quite at this level yet. He's been trying for a while. Like you said, he is only 25. So a lot of the Ultimate Fighter and Contender Series fights happened when he was very young. So maybe he's made big improvements. But for me, I like the well-roundedness, the cardio, and the volume for Andre Lima here.
Yeah, Raposo took the long route to get to the UFC. And Andre Lima, I think he had a fight in the Contender Series. He won that. But other than that, definitely the easier path to get to the spot where he's at. But for the upside for Raposo, he's 25. So, I would assume he's getting better. He's one of these Northeast guys, trains at the New England Cartel. So he is in his home region. I'm sure he's going to, try to have a bunch of family there to be at his UFC debut. I actually don't think Raposo is a bad fighter. I just think this is a little bit of a tough matchup for him. If he had a little bit more wrestling in his pocket, or at least showed his wrestling more in his fights, I'd be more inclined to go with a Raposo bet here or a Raposo pick. But Andre Lima at this point, it just looks like a more dangerous striker on the feet. I think he's super sharp. He's had a lot of kickboxing and Muay Thai experience. And I was kind of impressed with, his ground game against Severino. Like, he was getting taken down, but Severino, not really a grappler. And he really was kind of forced to try to go for those takedowns. And then Lima was threatening with a bunch of submissions. He was jumping guillotine. He had that arm isolated for a little bit there. And every time he got taken down, he was scrambling to either go for a submission or he's scrambling to get back up to his feet. And I think that kind of frustrated Igor and kind of led to the bite. So, yeah, I think Andre Lima should get a win here. I kind of lean in a submission. I want to see the number on it. I don't think Lima has one on his professional record, but Raposo lost by submission to Jake Hadley. And from the way that I see it, is Raposo at some point, I think, is going to be forced to start shooting takedowns because Lima throws hard. He's very sharp. And if he does do that, could leave his neck exposed. And Lima has shown he's aggressive going for those submissions. So that's a side I'll probably be looking at. At minus 220, I think it's probably accurate. But this is flyweights. There is a lot of variance to it. So you always got to proceed with caution. But Andre Lima will be the pick for me. Moving on, we got Mickey Gall coming in after quite some time off as a pretty sizable dog here against Basil Hafez, who sits at a near minus 300 favorite. Both men are 32 years of age. Basil Hafez made his debut last summer, I believe it was. So he's been off for a little bit, but that debut was against Jack Della Maddalena, and he put on a pretty damn good performance for taking that fight on short notice. Gave Jack Della pretty much all he could handle. Did lose the fight, in my opinion. I know that one's kind of controversial, but I thought Jack Della won, by damage pretty clearly. But Basil showed a good chin for one. He showed a lot of toughness. He showed pretty solid power on the feet, and of course, good takedowns and ability to control Jack Della on the ground. In this fight, he's going up against Mickey Gall, who Mickey Gall has been in the UFC for a long time. His record's 7-5, but I think 11 of those 12 fights are in the UFC. So you can't really knock him for his record because he kind of got pushed in there early in his career. And what he's known for mostly is his jiu-jitsu and his submission skills. Here against Basil, he's a big dog, and that's probably because Basil's very solid on the ground, very solid wrestler. And Mickey hasn't fought in like 2 years. Last time he fought was against Mike Mallet, and he got knocked out. So looks like a tough task for Mickey Gall to come back here and get a win, but do you think he could pull it off?
I'm not ready to completely write off Mickey Gall. I know he trains with some really good strikers, or he's friends with some. I always hear the stories like him and Dustin Jacoby out in Colorado have trained together quite a bit. And, some of those Factory X guys. Jiu-jitsu is really, really good. like you said, he kind of got thrown into the UFC and had some really tough fights. But coming back into the UFC at this stage in his career against a guy like Hafez, who isn't really, that bad on the mat at all. He likes to grapple. He's got a good submission game too. I just don't think he's got a big enough advantage to where I'm comfortable that he's going to come in here as a plus 225 dog and shock everybody. Like I think Hafez showed against Jack Della Maddalena. He's got good takedowns, but he's also very good with his control on the ground, and he's very knowledgeable on the mat with the jiu-jitsu. And, in each position, he's very, very good. So I don't see Mickey Gall coming out here and being able to get him to the ground on his back. And I don't see him being able to control him or really even finding these submissions. And actually, this is one of the fights where, you ever get a feeling where you just know something's going to happen. You're very confident. And, when you get those gut feelings, half the time it works. I think Basil Hafez is going to come knock him out. Like Hafez doesn't have the most knockouts on his record by any means. But we saw against JDM, like he throws bombs. He's very, very technical with the striking. Like he was backed up against the fence and would eat a few shots, but would rock JDM with a couple. And if he's hitting Mickey Gall with those shots, I don't see Gall being able to take him the way JDM was. If you watch Mickey Gall striking, his head straight up, he stands very tall. And if you start getting clipped by a dude like Hafez, I think it's going to be a short night. I was listening to, I think it was Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo talk about Hafez and how Kamaru's trained with him and stuff in the past, and the power he has just feels different. Like he hits very hard, and he's very good with the wrestling and with the jiu-jitsu as well. And, those type of fighters against the jiu-jitsu specialists, I just think he's going to do some damage. And another reason for the knockout, I just don't think he's even going to want to mess with Mickey on the ground. Like, that's his strong suit. That's exactly where he wants to fight. That he's been knocked out before. We've seen Mickey Gall absolutely flatline. So I expect Hafez to try to keep it on the feet. He's going to be stronger. He's going to hit harder. Probably going to be more accurate and more crisp striking too. I have a feeling he catches him at some point and finds the knockout. So give me Basil Hafez for the dub.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I actually do kind of like the knockout side, and I could see a ground and pound scenario as well. Mickey Gall's been ground and pounded out before by Diego Sanchez, and I don't think Basil's going to be that concerned with Mickey on the ground, because I saw today that Basil and Mickey Gall actually competed. I can't really say fought, but they competed in a grappling match before, and Basil won. So he knows what Mickey Gall feels like on the ground. I don't know how long ago that was, but either way, I think Basil's confident in his skills on the ground. I could see a world where, he's in top position. Mickey Gall's trying to go for submissions or trying to hit a sweep, and Basil's just punching him in the face, and eventually enough is enough. So I think Basil Hafez is the rightful favorite here. Might be a little bit pricey, but I don't see Mickey Gall coming back, after a couple losses, couple years off, looking like a different fighter. I just don't really see it. So I'm going to go with Basil Hafez here for the pick. Moving on, we got Jocelyn Edwards with the blue hair. She might be blue, might be red. You never know when it comes fight night, but she's coming plus 161 against Eileen Perez, sitting at minus 205. Now, you touched on it earlier. It's a fight that got put together because of some type of brawl that happened at the UFC Apex. And I love that, because rarely do we ever get any type of beef in these women's MMA fights. And we got some real beef here. Eileen Perez is not somebody you like to mess with, because she's a feisty one. And apparently Jocelyn Edwards is as well. So I like this fight. For a women's MMA fight, I'm all about it. Eileen Perez, we know her to be an aggressive striker. She's going to look to take you to the ground and do her work there. Jocelyn Edwards, kind of more of a point fighter. Struggles with the takedown defense in a lot of her fights. I don't know how you lose to Jessica Rose Clark, but she found a way to do it. And she is the underdog here. I think rightfully so. And Eileen Perez, sitting at minus 205. It's women's chalk, but do you think it's the right play?
Yeah, I think this is Eileen Perez all day. I mean, I look at Jocelyn Edwards and all of her performances. She doesn't have any finishing upside. She always, to me at least, she seems a tad slow on the feet. Like, she's a technical striker. She has good kicks and stuff. She's just very slow with her delivery on the shots. I think she's going to be getting outstruck, or Eileen Perez is going to be landing the bigger shots if they're on the feet. And I've also seen Jocelyn Edwards taken down before by Lucy Pudilova twice, and she was, controlled in those situations. She wasn't really able to control Nora Cornell, and Nora Cornell, somehow won that fight. 9 rounds. 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 by just, landing the bigger shots while it was on the feet, reversing position, and, racking up some good ground and pound at times. And other than that, like, Jocelyn Edwards is winning split decisions over very average or bottom of the barrel fighters. Ji Young Kim, split decision win in that one. She outlanded her on the feet and landed a takedown, but she's not landing these big strikes on the feet that are just fight changing by any means. Lucy Pudilova, we were there in attendance, and I about fell out of my seat when they called Jocelyn Edwards as the winner. I think everybody thought Lucy Pudilova won the fight. But Ailin Perez, I think her only weakness is that third round. Like, she goes balls out for the first two. We've seen her land 10 takedowns in a fight before. She does burn a lot of energy in that first half of the fight. When she fought Lucy Pudilova in her last fight, she was pretty tired in the third, damn near got submitted. Very interesting and close call. But other than that, she dominated. So if she can come out here and just get takedowns early in the fight, I don't think Jocelyn Edwards is a cardio machine by any means. So I don't think she's worrying about the third round here. I think she lands the bigger shots on the feet. She's probably got the faster striking and the more volume, and then she's going to be able to land these takedowns because she's just physically stronger than everybody she fights. So I think this is Ailin Perez all day long. If Jocelyn Edwards wins, it's going to be some split decision fluky shit like it was against Lucy Pudilova. But for the pick, man, I really do think Ailin comes in and dominates this one.
Yeah, the downside here, I think, for both ladies is you look at their UFC wins and they're just against straight cans, like straight up cans, like Jocelyn Edwards, Wu Yanan, Ramona Pascual, Ji Young Kim, and Lucy Pudilova. And then on the other side, Ailin Perez is Ashley Evans Smith and Lucy Pudilova. So in that Lucy Pudilova fight, she was dominating the first two rounds, and then she came into that fight with a black eye from Jocelyn Edwards. So, I mean, that thing started to swell up, and then round three, she kind of gassed out, and maybe she just kind of coasted because she was up 2 rounds. But either way, she got the win there. I think she should be able to get the takedowns here. I don't think Jocelyn Edwards is really that dangerous on the feet. And like you said, I don't think she has like a great gas tank where she can take over late and finish her. So, like, Ailin Perez is able to win the first two. And then maybe hold on for the third or even, dominate the third as well. So I'm going on Ailin Perez. And after that, we can get a little twerk show in the octagon.
Minus 205 isn't crazy.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I mean, normally it is in women's MMA. But Jocelyn Edwards just doesn't offer a whole lot that's going to, like I said earlier, change a fight. She's not going to, go out there and dominate a fight. I don't know. I just think Ailin, once she gets her down, is going to do some damage and probably hold her there. She's a stronger girl.
Yeah, I think the only way that Edwards wins this fight is if she can keep it on the feet and just kind of stay at range. But I trust Ailin to be who she is, and that's forward movement, forward pressure, throwing caution to the wind, and then going for takedowns. So, yeah, I like Ailin Perez. Moving on, we got Nico Price coming in again. I mean, this guy's 34, but his last fight, he looked like he was about 50 years old, coming in with the double knee sleeves. And now he's coming back after getting knocked out by Phil Rowe. He is the underdog here against Alex Morono, who sits at minus 220. This is a rematch. In the first fight, Nico Price knocked out Alex Morono in the second round, but it was then overturned to a no contest because Nico Price was puffing on the weed. And somehow, back then, if you test positive for marijuana, I guess they called that a no contest. But either way, here we are. Years later, and Alex Morono, after getting knocked out, is the favorite. A lot of that is due to the damage that Nico Price has accrued over the years. And as I said earlier, if a fighter ever comes out in double knee sleeves, man, you could just chalk that up as an L. So if Nico Price comes out in double knee sleeves, it might be a max bet on Alex Morono. But in reality, this fight should be a lot of chaos because that's what Nico Price brings. She's just going to go out there and brawl. And it could turn into a brawl. And if it does turn into a brawl, then Nico Price is live. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm the Nico Price bad luck charm because I've been to both of his last 2 fights against Phil Rowe and Robbie Lawler, and he's got knocked out in both of them. But honestly, like the Robbie Lawler fight, this is off topic, but that's probably one of my favorite fights I've ever been at live. Just because retirement fight for Lawler, the crowd went insane when he got the knockout. But it definitely didn't look like Nico Price was there to fight. It looked like a Cowboy Cerrone Conor McGregor moment where he just The stage
It
was
looked
too
like
big,
he got
didn't want to be
paid
there.
to take a dive, you
It
know?
did.
Like, come on.
Because the
30
shots were like real in close, like in the
Yeah.
clinch. And it's like
Oh my
40-year-old Robbie Lawler. It's not the Robbie Lawler that used to just go out there and flatline dudes, and he just crumbled too. It's not like he just got hurt and stumbled down and got finished. Like this dude like folded from these
Robbie
tiny
Lawler
little
had one
uppercuts in the clinch.
He had one win in the last, what was it, 6 years? And it was to like a 50-year-old Nick Diaz who didn't want to be there. And then he goes and fights Nico Price, and Nico Price falls over in 40 seconds. Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. And, you know, another thing that's going to be interesting, this post-USADA world that we're living in, like Nico Price might show up looking juiced to all hell too. Like he looks good on Instagram right now if you've been following it all. You know, the chin's a huge issue though, even against a guy like Morono. Morono isn't the most like powerful guy in the world. He doesn't go out there and, you know, knock out everybody he fights or anything, but he is accurate and he throws some volume and he's very technical with the striking. So, you know, if 40-year-old Robbie Lawler is knocking you out from the clinch, you know, Alex Morono is going to be live to knock you out as well. But, you know, Morono hasn't exactly looked very good lately either. Like Court McGee, I thought he could have lost that fight for sure. He got outlanded 60-38 in the strikes and even taken down. So he was very fortunate to get that win. Loses to Joaquin Buckley, not a bad loss, and then beats Tim Means after Tim Means, you know, was taking him down and beating him up a little bit in that first round. So this isn't like a, you know, prime Alex Morono by any means. He hasn't looked that great. So if Nico can just stay safe, I think Nico, you know, will probably land the bigger shots and the more volume. He'll give himself a chance to win if this thing goes to the scorecards. It's just the chin that's a big issue for me. I mean, we saw him against Phil Rowe, winning the fight up until the third round and then gets finished, which was super frustrating if you were on, you know, Nico Price is the underdog there. So his only win in the last, 4 years is Alex Oliveira, that might have been his retirement fight or one before his retirement fight. So, yeah, it's tough for me to pick Nico here. I really want to as a plus 172 dog, but I just can't trust a guy like that with the chin issues.
Yeah, I mean, is there any juice to, you know, help out your chin at this point? Or
yeah.
Do they test for that in what we're testing for now? Or I mean, if Morono, somebody's got to get Morono on the juice because good Lord, when are we ever going to get an Alex or an ab from like Alex Morono?
Yeah.
Is it ever going to happen in his career? Probably not. But yeah, I don't know. In this one, it seems to me, it kind of seems like a dog or pass. But at the same time, I'm like, how can I really have confidence in Nico Price? You know, at this point with the chin issues and just the overall durability, because you watch his fights recently, it's not really like he's hitting that hard, but he does throw a lot out at you. And Morono, he does seem chinny at some point. So I'm like, you know, Price could land something that puts him out, and he has before. But I think Morono will be a little bit sharper, a little bit more technical, and actually kind of like some submission upside for Morono. You know, if Nico is getting hit, shoots for a takedown, Morono loves to jump that ghillie, and is pretty deadly. You know, Morono's got a great guillotine, and Nico, with all the times that he's been hit in the head, might eventually start to look for some takedowns, and Morono could jump that. And Nico's got like 8 or 10 kids or something like that, so he's, you know, trying to collect some paychecks before, you know, he hits 38, 39. So he is only 34, but it seems like he's like 50. Holy shit. Morono's the pick for me. But probably one that I'll just bet violence, honestly. I think either guy can get finished. And like I said, I like kind of the Morono sub play here. So he'll be the pick.
I do kind of feel bad for my last thing on Nico Price is like outside of Phil Rowe and Robbie Lawler, like they're feeding him Michelle Pereira, Vicente Luque, who like 2020 Vicente Luque, not the Vicente Luque we've seen lately, like the killer Vicente Luque. Jeff Neal, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who, you know, regardless of his wins and losses, the dude hits like a truck. You know, his other loss, Vicente Luque, and then the no contest Alex Morono. So his losses are actually against, you know, some killers up until recently. And not to say that, you know, Phil Rowe is not like the worst fighter in the world either by any means. So he's on this card as well. So yeah, Nico Price, a lot of losses, but it's against some pretty high level competition.
Yeah. That's a great point, and does kind of get me a little bit more on the Nico Price train, especially at the price, but we'll see. Moving on, We got Phil Rowe coming in as a slight dog against Jake Matthews, who sits at minus 170. Phil Rowe, last time out, knocked out the boy we just talked about, Nico Price. He's been off for a while. Not really sure why. Maybe he just took some time off.
He fought Neil Magny, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't his last fight, but his last fight was Neil Magny, which was almost a year ago, which is kind of what I was kind of alluding to. But he did lose that fight, split decision. Fight where I thought he could have won, but it kind of just came down to game plan and everything didn't really go his way. He's 33. Jake Matthews still is 29. He's been in the UFC a long time, a lot of UFC experience. He's the favorite here after losing to Michael Morales. What are you thinking?
Yeah, this is a tough one too. Like for Phil Rowe, it makes it tough to bet on him because every time he goes out, it's like he's fighting too relaxed or he's not amped up the fight or something. I mean, especially in the Nico Price fight, it took him to the third round to really get going and find a big shot. Like he looked very lackadaisical in that fight. And the same thing against Magny. Like if you're fighting Neil Magny, all you want to do is stay out of the clinch with this dude. Don't eat the knees and the elbows. And that's exactly where damn near the whole entire fight took place. Like Phil Rowe's very long, he's tall and has good striking. If he can stay at range with guys, he's going to beat a lot of guys. But there's, I don't know if it's fight IQ exactly or what it is, but he just doesn't seem too pumped up out there to go out and find these big, he has a lot of finishes, but they're against, lower level guys. When he's fighting the Gabe Greens and Neil Magny's, those, kind of gatekeeping middle of the pack guys, he's losing those fights. And he doesn't look the best, in my opinion, when he's fighting up a level in competition. Like I said, the striking is good though. So if he can come in there and, stay on the volume, stay on the kicks and fight this thing at range, I do think he's going to have the advantage over a guy like Jake Matthews. But if you're Jake Matthews, I think the thing you have to do is just go out there and try to wrestle or at least put him against the cage, because that's exactly where Phil Rowe is not comfortable. That's not where he wants to fight at all. And we've seen guys beat him using that strategy. But for Jake Matthews, I know he's got a wealth of UFC experience, but I was looking at his record and watching some of his fights. His wins in the UFC in this division might be some of the most poor quality, like out of anybody. I think to me at least, his only really good win is Li Jingliang back in 2018. Other than that, he's, you wouldn't even recognize half these people that he's beaten in the UFC besides like maybe Diego Sanchez. And then recently, Andre Fiallo, who's on like a 5-fight knockout streak, got cut by the UFC and just got knocked out in his first fight outside of the UFC in I forget which promotion, some promotion in Europe. And then he beat Darius Flowers, who, not the best fighter in my opinion. He's now 0-2 in the UFC, losing to Michael Johnson as of late. So, yeah, Jake Matthews is a guy who beats the guys he's supposed to, and he loses to the Matthew Simmelsbergers, the Sean Brady's, Michael Morales, those type of guys. And I guess for me, I just have to decipher which one is Phil Rowe. Is Phil Rowe in the category of Andre Fiallo, or is he in the category of Matthew Simmelsberger? And right now I lean more towards Matthew Simmelsberger, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, I want to take Phil Rowe as the dog here. He's just got to keep it at range. I think he can hurt Jake Matthews. We saw him make Jake Matthews drop 3 times by Simmelsberger. We saw him dropped once, against or who was I looking at? I can't even think of it now, but we've seen him hurt a few times. We've seen him hit. He's not the best boxer in the UFC. He's got good hands, but he doesn't throw a lot of volume. So if Rowe can keep it at distance, I think he has a good chance to cash as a dog.
Here's a question for you. Do you think Neil Magny beats Jake Matthews?
I think he could, based off of the volume, because Jake Matthews has got some pop, but he only lands 3.3 significant strikes per minute. And if you can't drag Neil Magny down, he's just going to box you up and fight you in the clinch. And I don't think Jake Matthews wins that fight that often.
Yeah, I agree. I think Neil Magny would have kind of easy work against Jake Matthews, if I'm being honest. And I still think Phil Rowe could have won that fight, but he didn't. So I think skill for skill, Phil Rowe is a little bit higher. I mean, I like his frame, obviously 6'3", reach, 80-inch reach. He's going to have an 8-inch reach advantage. On the ground, I think he can hold his own. Jake Matthews, pretty good jiu-jitsu. But Phil Rowe, for some reason, has been in like every single grappling tournament there's ever been. And he just grapples these insane guys like Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan. And get submitted, but, I don't know why he's really doing that, just to stay active or what, or work on his skills, but at least he's working on it. At least he's doing that. I think he's got a pretty decent jiu-jitsu game. So if it does hit the ground, I think he can hold his own on the feet. I would love to see more volume from Phil Rowe, considering he has the frame, he can keep his opponents at range. But even if he doesn't, I'll still give him a slight edge. So Phil Rowe's going to be the pick for me. But these are two guys that I just don't have a lot of trust in either way. I don't know what Jake Matthews is going to show up on that night. I don't know what Phil Rowe's game plan is going to be, if he's going to fall into the trap of Daniil Magny or not. Maybe he falls into the trap of a Jake Matthews. We'll see. But it's kind of a dog or pass. And, at plus 135, I'll take him for the pick. Not sure if I'll bet on it, but I'll take him for the pick.
Yeah, it's like the one thing I go back to is, if you put these guys side by side and you look at them on fight night in the first round, it's Jake Matthews over the course of 3 rounds is going to fight with a lot more intensity than Phil Rowe too. Like, it just makes me so nervous. Like, if this is a close fight, it goes to the scorecards. Like, Jake Matthews maybe is a little more aggressive and maybe looks a little bit better to the judges. So it's tough, but dog money on Phil Rowe, never a bad thing. He's always got a chance at the knockout, or he's in these like split decision type fights. So
I agree. We move on. Grant Dawson back in action after taking a loss to Bobby Green in his first main event where he got knocked out. He's taking on Joe Solecki. He's probably not going to have to worry about getting knocked out against Joe Solecki. Joe Solecki is not much of a striker. This is a true grappler versus grappler matchup, and Grant Dawson is a massive favorite, mainly because he showed his grappling skills at some of the, within the top 15 of the lightweight division. Absolutely smothered Damir Ismagulov, smothered Jared Gordon, and that's just really what he does. Gets you to the ground, great wrestling, great jiu-jitsu, ability to take the back. That's kind of what Solecki offers as well, maybe not at the highest level. Definitely would favor Grant Dawson on the feet ever so slightly, and then Solecki, I don't think has the wrestling that Grant Dawson has. So that's why he's kind of a bigger favorite here. It is a pretty sizable step down for Grant Dawson. Seems like they're kind of setting him up for a win here. But it is a big price tag, so that is a little bit sketchy. What are you thinking?
Yeah, minus 413, kind of crazy from a guy coming off of getting knocked out, by Bobby Green in the first round. So that's a little scary, but I mean, as he should be the favorite for sure. You look at both of these guys, grappling specialists. I think the big difference between the two is Joe Solecki is like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, and Grant Dawson has like the MMA jiu-jitsu where he, he'll use his jiu-jitsu to kind of get into better positions and control you, land some ground and pound. And then on the feet, both guys, not the best strikers in the world, but like you said, I think Grant Dawson has the advantage there. I was watching back to his fight against it wasn't Bobby Green. Oh, Damir Ismagulov. And like Grant Dawson actually in the first round came out landing the more strikes and threw some really good kicks, some good body shots. And he kind of has that Chase Hooper left hand from the hip where he comes way over the top with it. And, he throws it with a lot of heat. So if he can, do that while it's on the feet, I think he's going to have the advantage over Joe Solecki here. And when it hits the ground, Grant Dawson, like I said, very good with his control, very good with his knowledge on each position. I don't think either guy is really going to be too capable of submitting each other here, unless it's like a club and sub type opportunity. But, as I look more into this fight, I kind of like the fight to end by KO or TKO, just from a ground and pound aspect. Somebody gets their back, flattens them out, and they just kind of shell up until the ref jumps off of them. I would lean Grant Dawson winning by that method over Joe Solecki, just because on the feet he does have a little bit of pop there. But I think everybody's going to be thinking submission, and it's just one of those fights that inevitably ends by knockout. So Grant Dawson's the pick for sure. I think his his MMA jiu-jitsu and his control and wrestling is better than Joe Solecki's. But yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what that TKO prop is.
Yeah, I mean, before that Bobby Green fight, I mean, Grant Dawson was 21-1. I mean, a 20-win career with only one loss. I mean, he was moving his way up the rankings, just running through guys. Like, he had dominant performances in his last 3 fights before that. And then, he gets knocked out, and everyone's kind of off the Dawson train, and I was kind of hoping we'd get a pretty decent line here on Grant Dawson, but he's still coming in as a big favorite. So I guess the books aren't, super recency bias in that way. It is a massive step down, so I guess that you could see some value here at minus 413. Gets him down and just smothers him for the whole fight. Maybe looks minus 1,000, or finishes him early. You never know. But I think he should win this fight. I don't think Joe Solecki is really what's his path to victory here? Getting Dawson's back for 2 out of the 3 rounds, maybe. He's not really going to offer anything on the feet. I don't think he's going to be able to take down Dawson and control him for long periods of time. I think Dawson's good enough to reverse position, even if he does get taken down. And on the feet, I would favor Dawson. I'm with you. I think the KO prop is super live here. I think Dawson ability to control his opponent on the ground, especially with the back control, and then just rain down power shots. I think that's an avenue for Dawson to get a TKO finish here. So Dawson's the pick, and I do kind of like the KO prop or an inside the distance.
Yeah, and I think Grant Dawson's the one fighting for a lot more here too. Before the Bobby Green loss, he was on his way to a title shot. I mean, I don't think put it together or look that often, but he was basically unbeaten in 8 fights, and he had the draw. So he's 8-0-1 heading into Bobby Green in the UFC, and then took the loss, which wasn't good. But if he goes out there and submits Bobby Green, he's kind of bumped up into that top half of the top 15. So yeah, I think he's still got that title aspirations, and he's not that far off if he can get back in the win column and start trying to climb that ladder again.
I agree. We move on to the featured prelim of the night. Roman Kopylov sitting at minus 121, going up against Cesar Almeida sitting at minus 109. So if you know anything about Cesar Almeida, everyone's going to talk about his Alex Pereira fights. He won 1, he lost 2, but that is quite the accomplishment to get a win over Alex Pereira. He is 36, 5-0 in his professional MMA career, but a long history of glory kickboxing, taking on Roman Kopylov, who, he got checked a little bit. He was making his way up the rankings, had a real good matchup against Anthony Hernandez, and Anthony Hernandez just drowned him throughout the fight, finished him in round 2 with a rear naked choke. And I just thought that was a terrible matchup for Roman Kopylov because he's a kickboxer, does not want to engage in any type of wrestling. And that's all Anthony Hernandez wants to do. But he gets his wish here. Kickboxer versus kickboxer. And one's a southpaw, one is an orthodox striker. So should be a good matchup. It's one that I'm looking forward to. And I don't really have a super big lean because, you see the odds are pretty close. I actually think Almeida moved more towards a favorite, might be the favorite at this point. So a lot of love coming in for Almeida. What are your thoughts?
Oh, man, it's tough, and it's a very good stylistic matchup. But, I think with the loss to Anthony Hernandez, Roman Kopylov has come down to earth a little bit. His win streak in the UFC, the method of how he did him, and the highlight reel knockout aspect of him looks really good. But at the end of the day, he knocked out Alessio De Chirico, retirement fight. He was close to 40, or if he wasn't, he fought like it. Punahele Soriano, who just got beat by Dustin Stoltzfus.
KO by Stoltzfus, right?
Yeah, submitted.
He got busted up on the feet too. So
come on, Punahele Soriano's only wins in the UFC are Dolce Lungambula and Dusko Todorovic. Oh, and then Askai Piachota, whoever the hell that is. Yeah, exactly. And Jamie Pickett on the Contender Series. So, he's not the best fighter in the world at all. And then he knocks out Claudio Hiberio, who has a lot of power, but outside that, he's not technical, and his only win in the UFC is Joseph Holmes. And then as of recently, we saw him knock out Josh Friend with the body shots and everything. But Josh Friend is not near a world beater either. So Kopylov's been dealt some very favorable matchups, and he's knocked all those guys out. But he's also lost to Albert Duraev, where he was only taken down 1 time in that fight. And I still need to rewatch this one, but he was outstruck 71-42 against Albert Duraev in that loss. And then he lost to Carl Roberson as well in his debut by submission. So he's not a world beater, I don't think. His striking obviously is very, very good. He's lightning fast, and the kicks are very good. I'd say his kicks are way and far better than his hands, if everything that I've watched at least. Yeah. And everybody going to talk about Alex Pereira and Cesar Almeida fighting 3 times, and then on the Kopylov side, they're going to talk about how he's been training in the Dagestan camp for this fight and for his last couple of fights. But Kopylov's not a guy that's going to go out there and shoot takedowns by any means. I don't care how long he's been training with the boys over there in Russia. Like, this dude is a kickboxer, and that's how he fights all of his fights. For Cesar Almeida, the UFC has thrown him grappler and grappler, Dylan Budka in the last fight. And, those guys can't beat Almeida. Eventually they get tired from trying to get the fights to the ground, and he knocks them out. They're finally giving him a fight in Kopylov where he's going to be able to showcase all of his skills on the feet. Like, he's not going to have to be worrying about stuff and takedowns for 15 minutes. He's going to be, right in his wheelhouse, in his world on the feet. And Kopylov, very good striker. Almeida's been doing it a lot longer, and he's been doing it a lot longer at a very, very high level. So I think once this thing plays out on the feet after the first couple of, round and a half, I think Almeida could take over. I think he could really, add up the volume, land the leg kicks. We've seen Roman Kopylov hit fairly often in the past. I just think Almeida is going to be the better striker. Maybe not the more powerful striker here, but I do think from a technicality standpoint, from a volume standpoint, I think he could have a slight advantage, because we've seen Roman Kopylov slow down later in fights. Who I think Claudio Ribeiro had a huge moment at the end of the first where he had Kopylov kind of stumbled, like falling back into the cage, hurt pretty badly. And then Claudio Ribeiro, too, in that fight, I want to say was getting on the leg kicks pretty heavy, too, and was having success. But, yeah, he's 7-7 with the leg kicks and was starting to do a little bit of damage. So if Almeida implements those 2 things, get on the leg early, land some good volume, I think he's going to have a chance to hurt Roman Kopylov. I think he's going to have a chance to take this thing to the distance and show a better gas tank. And overall, man, I kind of like Almeida here. And I got him at plus money. It was my first bet of the week about 4 or 5 days ago. So I'm on the Almeida side. It is a close fight at the end of the day. It's going to be a very fun fight. Interested to see which side you're leaning here.
Honestly, I'm not really leaning either side at this point. I mean, I'm kind of leaning the Almeida fight, or the Almeida side, but I just wish there was more like MMA tape where he's kickboxing guys. Like, he's been going up against a Dylan Budka who's trying to sniff his crotch the entire time. And he eventually knocks him out because he starts elbowing him in the head when he's going for a takedown and finishes it that way. And then the Contender Series fight, the guy was trying to take him down the whole time. So I don't really know where to rate his kickboxing. And the other thing that gives me a little bit more on the Kopylov side, well, I mean, I can't really say I don't know how to rate his kickboxing. I know he's going to be a good kickboxer, right? He's got a lot of experience there, but I don't know how it translates to MMA. But the threat of the takedown from Kopylov isn't really there. The thing for Kopylov is he's a southpaw, and like you said, his hands aren't really that good, but he loves his kicks. And a southpaw against orthodox, Kopylov's going to be ripping the body kick there all day. He's going to be throwing that inside leg kick, and then, of course, going to go upstairs with the head kick. So I think that favors Kopylov a little bit, just to have those weapons open. And Almeida, haven't really seen him in MMA kickboxing that much, so I don't know how well his kicks are, how well he uses them, how well his hands are against the southpaw. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot of unknowns at this point for Almeida. I would kind of lean his side just because takedown threat isn't there. I don't really believe Kopylov's win streak in the UFC is all that much to write home about, because you mentioned those guys really aren't that good. Like, they're bottom level guys that he was able to knock out, and he should have. So I think this is a step up for him compared to those guys. And it's not a terrible matchup for Kopylov because he's going to get to stand and strike. So I think it's pretty even. I would lean the Almeida side just because of the kickboxing experience. And lastly, I don't know that Kopylov really has a ton of grit in him. Like, we've seen him kind of fold in times where they're tough. When he's going up against these guys that he can knock out, he goes and knocks him out. But then he's going up against an Hernandez. He gets drowned. He just falls apart. And then he goes up against, Robertson early in his career, falls apart. Duraev falls apart. So if Almeida can get it on him and just kind of go with that game plan of just keep staying in his face and eventually you're going to drown him, then I like the Almeida side, but not super confident in it. But I'll take Almeida for the pick here. We move on. Randy Brown coming in as a favorite over Elizo Zaleski dos Santos, sitting at plus 140. Dos Santos is 37 years of age, coming off a very interesting fight that he had with Rinat Fakhretdinov, where he was a big underdog and managed to fight that one to a draw after he nearly got finished in round 1, battled back, and nearly finished Fakhretdinov in round 3. Randy Brown, on the other side, is he's on a good win streak. The only loss in a very long time is to Jack Della Maddalena. This is the first fight on the main card. It's an intriguing one for me. I wouldn't really say it's super bright, big name type of fight to start off the main card, but it is intriguing. And I don't know, man. Randy Brown is just one of these guys that I just can't get a super solid read on. Yeah. Like there's always something that I wish there's a little more with Randy Brown. I don't know if it's just urgency or aggression or what, but it just seems like he always leaves a little bit more to be desired. But he comes in here as a favorite. I think he should win the fight, but it just kind of scares me. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think Randy Brown should win for sure. But he's a little bit different than Zaleski dos Santos' last few opponents. I think Zaleski dos Santos has had some success lately because the guys he's fighting, in Rinat Fakhretdinov, need that takedown to really implement their game. And when you're not able to do that and you're not able to really have success with it later in the fight, he's able to capitalize after making you work and getting you tired and just kind of out-dogging you. Like Zaleski dos Santos is just a dog. And, when guys don't have the gas tank to fight that way for 3 rounds, he either wins or, like in the last fight, pulls out the 10-8 and gets the draw. Same thing with Abubakar Nurmagomedov. Same thing with Benoit Saint-Denis, to be frank. Like Benoit Saint-Denis had good success early in that fight, landed some takedowns, but Zaleski dos Santos was just able to make him expend energy, make him work, and then just make it a dogfight and go out there and get the win. But when he fights guys like Muslim Solecki with that karate style, even like Li Jingliang was able to take him down, but he's also able to, keep him at distance and really hurt him on the feet. He struggles. Like when guys aren't willing to just go in there and make it a brawl and make it an all-out war, Zaleski dos Santos does struggle. And Randy Brown's not a guy who's going to come in here and look to, toss you around on the mat or anything. He's going to fight you at range. He's very, very long. He's hard to hit because of his length. And, if he can just keep the fight at distance with his 78-inch reach, he's going to make this very tough for Zaleski dos Santos to really do a whole lot, in my opinion. I think dos Santos is going to have to rely on the body kicks here and the leg kicks to really try to slow down Randy Brown, because if he's not in grappling exchanges and Randy Brown has energy for 3 rounds, he's gonna beat Zaleski dos Santos, in my opinion. I do think too, like Zaleski dos Santos against Rinat Fakhretdinov looked a step slower than normal, even though he made it a draw. And I'm not saying he doesn't look like he's got the dog in him anymore, but he didn't look as fast as he normally does. He didn't look quite as aggressive as he normally does either early in the fights. And I think that's just from having a super long mixed martial arts career, super long, just getting to that, 40-year-old range. He's going to be 38 this year. So, yeah, I think Randy Brown should be able to kind of cruise to some kind of decision victory, possibly even some kind of knockout. But I kind of lean for this one to go to the scorecards and, just kind of being a distance striking type of fight. But Zaleski dos Santos has some damn good wins. He's knocked out Sean Strickland before. Like I said, he is a dog. So if he finds himself in that situation, he's going to be live. But I feel like Randy Brown's going to keep it outside.
Yeah, man. If Randy Brown that fought Solecki his last time out comes in this fight against Zaleski,
oh, he's toast. I
would love to take a little shot on Randy Brown, or maybe a Randy Brown by KO, because he did exactly what he needed to do against Solecki. It's just like move around, don't be a stationary target, use your length, and then once you got Solecki, or in this case, once you got Zaleski kind of sitting there waiting for you, you just explode with some big shots, and he knocked him out with a straight right. Zaleski, At this point, I think he's just kind of a plodding striker. And honestly, I think his durability is a little bit down. Like, Renat hits hard, and he does blitz you pretty hard in that first round, but it looked like he was almost out of there in the first. And I had a bet on Zaleski at like plus 300 because I thought Fakhretdinov wouldn't be able to take him down that easily. And Zaleski just has better cardio, and he's just got really solid Muay Thai. Thought it was a tough matchup for Fakhretdinov. So I'm a Zaleski believer, but in this fight, I think it is a tough matchup for him. Just smaller guy, not going to be able to sit in the pocket really and unleash his combinations with his hands. And then those body kicks, I don't really think will be there because Randy Brown's going to be so far at range that I don't think he'll be able to land as many as he did against like Fakhretdinov or even Abubakar Nurmagomedov. So Randy Brown's the pick. He wins fights. At the end of the day, he wins fights, not always in the fashion that I think he should. I think he should be able to win these fights a little bit more clear, like the Turman fight, the Trinaldo fight. They're just fights that I think he should win a lot more clear. In this one, I hope he can do it. He's a fun guy to watch, and at minus 177, it's not terrible. You know, it's kind of short chalk, but I'll take him for the pick. Moving on. Probably one of the greasiest fights on the card, to be honest. Jailton Almeida, minus 250 against Alexander Romanov. Now, Romanov, one of these guys where you see the picture on the screen. I don't know if that's accurate. Because this dude, he seems to fluctuate with his appearance and his weight. Now, in that picture, you can kind of see some little formation of some abs. But I don't think we're going to be seeing that come weigh-ins on Friday. And you're definitely not going to be seeing a shaved head because right now he's rocking a little mop head. So that's never a good look. But he was thought to be this great prospect coming up in the heavyweight division. Then he took a couple losses, and then he found a bounce-back win against Blagoy Ivanov. Here he is, fighting Jailton Almeida, coming off his first loss in the UFC, where he was winning the fight until he froze up and then got elbows dropped on him, some hammer fists, and he got knocked out. Kind of a quick turnaround for him. I mean, that was beginning of March, so less than 2 months, or I guess less than 3 months once the fight takes place. Less than 3 months turnaround. Here he is, sitting at minus 250. Do you have faith that he could cover a minus 250 price tag?
Oh, not really, man. And I was thinking it was kind of a quick turnaround too, because it's not like he got, flatlined or anything, but, to bounce back off of a loss like that, I guess maybe best thing is to go back in there and get back at it. But, against Romanov's such a wild card because there's been fights in the UFC where he looks like the next champion. Like he just goes out and dominates and he's in shape and stuff. And then there's other fights that we've seen often, like against Alexander Volkov and Marcin Tybura, where this dude has like 2 minutes of gas. I remember against Alexander Volkov, I think he shot like one takedown, and when he didn't get it, this dude was huffing and puffing in like the first 45 seconds. And then Volkov lands 12 shots and he puts him out very, very fast. This is a fight too. You got to watch and see what they look like on the scales. I mean, we know Jailton Almeida is going to look very, very in shape, ripped. He only weighs, 230 or so for heavyweight. And then Romanov, he might look like a massive bag of milk, or he might look like he's been, training a little bit for this fight. The problem that I find with Almeida is, if Blades was able to knock you out in that fashion, kind of the side hammer fist to the side of the head when you're going for a takedown, it makes me worried about if he makes some kind of mistake in this fight trying to wrestle and ends up on his back and Romanov ends up on top, because Romanov isn't, the most athletic guy in the world. He's, very slow at times, but when he gets guys all on their back, he's very, very good at controlling position just because of how big he is and how heavy he is and strong. Like if he somehow finds himself in the mount, this thing's probably over because he's that powerful too from the top. He's not the most powerful guy on the feet because he's so, he doesn't really throw anything with technique or anything. But, if he has you under him, he's going to land some big ground and pound. And like we've seen Almeida already in the UFC against Blades, he kind of folds when you're able to put some shots on him in a bad position. That's my one big worry. And he's a very big dude too. He's every bit of 265, and to be able to take him down, it might be a little challenging for Almeida. But, also it's another reason you got to watch and wait to see what he looks like on the scales. Because if Romanov looks bad on the scales, I don't really think you have to worry about a whole lot, because Almeida is going to look to wrestle. And if you're wrestling a guy that big with a bad gas tank, he's just going to gas. It's the easiest way to zap somebody's energy, is to try to make them wrestle with you. But that one mistake is what is kind of making me hesitant to pick Almeida. But for the pick, I think you have to take him here. I think he's a far more superior athlete, and probably, obviously a better wrestler. It's just kind of a strength disadvantage for him going up against a guy this big. But yeah, I'll take him for the pick, but not confident whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. I'm like, Almeida should be favored. I don't know that I would really trust, minus 250 or higher, because you kind of laid it out. Like, Romanov, at his core, he's a wrestler, and he's not really a guy that depends on like one punch knockout power or anything. So if he's on his back, Almeida's going to be in the driver's seat. And in all reality, Almeida is probably the guy that's going to shoot a takedown first. But the problem with that is Almeida doesn't have the best control on the ground either. I mean, he kind of racks up a bunch of takedowns, and if Romanov can get back up, maybe he finds himself in the clinch, and Romanov is able to trip him onto his back. And Romanov being all 265 on top of you, he has the wrestling base. Maybe he's able to stay there, and Almeida just can't get up. And then Romanov's raining down some shots, and Almeida's like, "Ah, shit, like, here we go again." And then that's how your parlay gets screwed. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think Romanov is really that great. I think he's got the ability to ragdoll a bunch of heavyweights, lower level heavyweights, which he has done in the UFC. And Almeida, he's not a big dude. Like, at the end of the day, he's just not a big dude. He's going to be the more athletic guy, probably. Definitely more faster guy in this spot. But it just comes down to position. And if Almeida finds himself in a bad position, that could really be wraps. And maybe he finds himself in a good position. And we've seen in a lot of Romanov's, I guess both of Romanov's losses, like, if he's in a bad position, he's just kind of he's going to accept it. Like, he's not really a true warrior when it comes down to it. I mean, he got kicked with like one gut shot from Volkov, and he was like, "I'm out of here." So, yeah, I don't know. Not a lot of heart on either side. So don't like that. I don't know. Romanov at plus 200 is interesting. I would honestly look more for like a Romanov by KO type of thing if you like that side, just because, like I said, laid it out. He's laying on him. Almeida can't get back up, and Romanov does have some nasty ground and pound. They called him like King Kong or something because he throws two fists down at once. So Almeida's the pick, but I don't really love it. So greasy heavyweights. We're talking heavyweights that are grapplers. Like, how much more greasy does it get? It's not even like two heavyweights that just throw bombs. We're talking about two guys that only really wrestle. So very weird.
I think too, if Almeida loses this somehow, Romanov, like, what's he do? He's got to try to cut, right, to 205.
Yeah.
Like, if you lose this fight because you make a mistake and Romanov ends up on top, like, it's not that the skills aren't there in the wrestling department. It's just these guys are too big and strong.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out, though, because it could look just really weird.
It's a very shitty fight that's going to be, very, like you said, very interesting.
Yeah. We move on to the featured bout on the main card. Kevin Holland coming in as a minus 265 favorite against Michal Oleksiejczuk, sitting at plus 204. Late addition to the card. Kevin Holland going back up to middleweight. So he spent some time at welterweight, did okay, and then decides to take this fight, probably just because of the short notice to take it at 185. I don't know if he's going to stay there or not. But Michal Oleksiejczuk coming off the loss to Pereira. They were both on the same card, UFC 299, which we were at, and we saw both these fighters lose. So both fighters coming off of losses. Holland's was to MVP, and Oleksiejczuk's was to Michel Pereira. What do you think about this fight?
Two good losses there, honestly.
Yeah,
two not bad losses.
Nothing to hang your head about,
Yeah. I told myself Oh, when was it? I think against Jack Della Maddalena when Kevin Holland came out and just looked kind of, average. Didn't look like he was really trying to win the fight, and really looked like that against Michael Venom Page too. But I would never bet on him again. And then they throw him in here against Oleksiejczuk. And here I am scheming on how I'm going to make money on Kevin Holland. Like, I've had a good past with Kevin Holland up before the Jack Della Maddalena fight. I hit the plus 1,000. I think it was round 1 sub against Chiesa. I hit the Ponzinibbio KO. Faded him against Wonder Boy. It's just worked out really good up until recently. But Oleksiejczuk's a guy that fought at 205 for a while, popped hot for PEDs. I think it was an estrogen blocker, which is like a precursor or whatever you're going to take when you're on the juice. And then since then, he's just kind of looked average. He's beaten the Sam Alves and Cody Brundage, which he was in a bad spot against Cody Brundage and was able to reverse position and get the TKO. But loses to Caio Bahayo, not a bad loss, and then knocks out Chidi Njokuani, who is a good fighter but older, and then gets submitted by Alex Pereira. And the one common theme in all of his losses, or most of his losses, is that he's not a grappler whatsoever. He's kind of a fish out of the water off of his back. Even on, when he's on top, sometimes he's susceptible to getting in bad positions and submission attempts from his opponents. And Kevin Holland's a guy that if he can get you on the ground and put you on his back, he's very, very live for the sub. It's just in this fight, I don't see Kevin Holland implementing a wrestling game plan. He never really does. He doesn't really have the wrestling chops, but he's very good with the jiu-jitsu. He's very slick, and he can pull them off. So, yeah, on the feet, too, I think Kevin Holland at range wins this fight 9 out of 10 times just because, he hits harder. Oleksiejczuk kind of shows that he will fold at times, and he can be hit and hurt quite often. But it's just, Kevin Holland just kind of untrustable at this point in his career. It seems like he's taking more fights for paychecks than he is for wins. And I hate to see that. It makes it hard to bet. But, Oleksiejczuk kind of, against strikers, he fares well. But against one at the level of Kevin Holland and a guy who hits like hard like Kevin Holland, I just don't see him having too much success. I think Kevin Holland's chin is very, very good as well. He's never really been knocked out besides that little flash knockout from a headbutt against who was it against? Was it
Dawkins? Kyle
Dawkins, yeah. Ended in a no contest. So, I think his chin's too good to get knocked out against Oleksiejczuk. I think his range and his length is going to make it hard for Oleksiejczuk to really put in those combinations. And I think Kevin Holland's going to finish this one inside the distance.
Yeah, Kevin Holland's a guy that's just it's tough to trust him, but some of these matchups that he's in, it just seems like it's just an easy win for him. Now, it's not super easy because Oleksiejczuk is dangerous, but Kevin Holland's best asset, he's got like a granite chin. Like the guy takes some massive shots, and it doesn't really seem to phase him. And going up against Oleksiejczuk, really all he's got to worry about is an overhand left. Like that's really all he's got in his arsenal. Watch his film. Like all he's really doing is trying to walk you down and wing an overhand left. So Kevin Holland's going to be longer. He's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage. He's got the better jiu-jitsu game. The only real downside of that is he doesn't shoot takedowns. He doesn't wrestle. All of his submissions are defensively when his opponents are shooting on him. I don't really think Oleksiejczuk's going to be shooting because he doesn't want to go there. So probably ends up with this fight playing out on the feet. But we did see in Kevin Holland's last fight, if it's not working out well on the feet, he did shoot 2 takedowns, and he did have a submission attempt. So maybe, just maybe, he might look to take this fight to the ground. Now, we can't be confident in that because it's Kevin Holland. But if he's on a 2-fight losing streak, maybe he feels the need to get a takedown and work his jiu-jitsu game. And I think he would have a lot of success here against Oleksiejczuk because that's like half of his losses or even more in the UFC. I mean, he's got, 7 losses on his professional record, and 5 of them are by submission. So the writing's on the wall for you, Kevin. I mean, you could get this guy to the ground and sub him probably pretty easily. So why not do it? Probably. Why won't he do it? Because he's Kevin Holland and he's a hard-headed guy that just loves to stand and bang it out. So Kevin Holland's the pick. I think he should be able to get this done inside the distance. He should hold his own on the feet. If not, land some good shots against Oleksiejczuk and should get the win. I think it's a good spot for him. I'll take him for the pick.
I can also see him trying to mix in some like, inside trips and some weird ways to get the fight to the mat. Because if he does, like he's gonna submit him if he gets him to the ground. Like
Yeah.
Oleksiejczuk is so susceptible to being submitted, and he's been submitted time and time again. Like if Kevin Holland, if I knew he was going to go out there and actively try to get it to the ground or try to get into the clinch, I would absolutely hammer his finishing prop. But
Yeah.
You might want to just put on a show for the crowd too.
Man, I fell into that trap against Wonder Boy. I'm like,
yeah,
you should be able to submit Wonder Boy.
Yeah.
Didn't want it. Hopefully he wants it in this one. So, he can get a win. Moving on to the co-main event. Sean Strickland coming in at -245 against Paulo Costa, sitting at +190. Both men, 33 years of age. This is a 5-round co-main event. And that would seem to favor Sean Strickland because, as we know, Sean Strickland got that endless gas tank. He's got that endless pressure. Going to walk you down with that Philly shell, that iCarly stance. Going to pump that jab out there, maybe throw a 1-2, and he's going to be defensively sound with his guard. I mean, I don't know how he does it. Well, I probably know because he spars all the time. But you watch his fights, he has just an insane ability to block punches with his arms. Like he just finds the punch before he gets there, and he just blocks it, throws his arm up, and it doesn't hit. Paulo Costa, not really sure why he's getting this opportunity. One win in the last, 4 or 5 years, and that only win was to Luke Rockhold. So he's getting a step up here, the number 1 contender, Sean Strickland. But he is always dangerous, and he is very solid on in the cage. So it's a good matchup when you break it down. But who do you think pulls it off?
Yeah, super tough. 5 rounds obviously favors Sean because the guy's gas tank and is good. In a fight that's going to be probably predominantly striking, I think he's going to have the advantage if this thing goes long. But Paulo Costa is just kind of a guy that is always dangerous. We saw it against Robert Whittaker, landing that spinning kick that landed right on the jaw and damn near put him out. He's always live for that kind of knockout. Holds some good power in the hands. But, at the end of the day, like when you really dive into it, his wins in the last, 4 or 5 years is Yoel Romero and Luke Rockhold. That's it. Everybody else he's losing to. Israel Adesanya, obviously very, very good champion for a long time. Got outstruck by Marvin Vettori and lost that fight. And then, ultimately got outstruck and outworked by Robert Whittaker in a 3-round fight where he kind of was slowing down a little bit, which makes me just think if Sean can just survive to the 3rd round, like I feel like he's going to take over heavily, or he could at least. I just, if Sean's just coming out here with just the jab, I think Paulo could have enough big moments to kind of steal rounds and make it close. I just don't really like the thought of Costa going 5, though, unless he's really, really been putting in the work and is super prepared for it. Sean Strickland's a guy that when he pours on the volume halfway through the fight, if you start to get tired, he makes it really, really hard for you to play catch up. So it's pretty simple for me. I'm going to take the guy that's been fighting way more often and at a very, very high level in Sean Strickland. I think Costa is probably live to maybe find some kind of knockout early, but if not, I just think Sean kind of runs away with it halfway through the fight.
Yeah. The more I dive into this fight, I think it's a little bit tougher for Strickland to cover like a -250 price tag. Just the more I break it down, like I don't think Paulo Costa's cardio is really, bad. I mean, he had a great 5th round against Marvin Vettori, outlanded him there. Marvin Vettori was winning the fight, won the fight, but Paulo Costa didn't really slow down. Even against Luke Rockhold, Paulo, that fight was at elevation, and Paulo didn't really look terribly tired compared to like Luke Rockhold. So held his own there. And then against Whittaker just has such good movement. I think it was tough for Costa to kind of track him down and keep up the pace. So that's definitely going to be a problem here against Strickland to keep up the pace with the volume. But we've seen Strickland lose fights where he outlands the guy, but the other guy is just landing a little bit more significantly, a little bit more powerful shots. Lost to Dricus, outlanded him by 36 significant strikes. Lost to Cannonier, outlanded him by 11 significant strikes. And this one, I think it just going to come down to, if it goes to the scorecards, like what are the judges going to score? And that it's kind of tough when you're betting Strickland at minus 250 to know that. Like maybe Paulo Costa lands 2 big shots in a round, but gets outlanded 30-18 or something like that. Do they give Costa the round? Probably. And then, you just got to win 3 rounds out of 5. Obviously you favor Sean Strickland later in the fight. I think he will be able to take over as the fight goes on, but early on, Paulo Costa is going to be super explosive, and I don't really see him slowing down a ton. And when you're that good of an athlete and you're that powerful, I don't really think he's got one shot knockout power, but he does land pretty hard. And if you have that threat, like Strickland can't just continually pump out a jab, pump out a 1-2, like when Abus Magomedov is dying in the cage because he's out of gas. He can't just take over like that. He's got to be a little bit more cautious with what he throws. So that does give me a little bit more of a lean towards Costa, but at the end of the day, I do think Strickland is the rightful favorite, and I do believe he should be able to stay sound defensively. He's shown that in a lot of his fights. His only knockout loss in a long time was Alex Pereira. I don't think Costa clips him to put him out here. Could land some good shots, but I think Strickland should be able to hold on. I'll take him for the pick, but like I said, if it goes to a decision, kind of putting it in the hands of the judges, that's always tough sometimes. Strickland doesn't always get the nod when he's landing the more volume, but the other guy's throwing harder. So we'll see, but Strickland's the pick. Brings us to the main event. Islam Makhachev coming in as the biggest favorite on the card, minus 600, and it only seems to be growing against Dustin the Diamond Poirier, sit at plus 405, which is, or what could be, his retirement fight. That's kind of what it sounds like it is. But if he does win, I think it's pretty hard for him to go out with the belt. I think he would probably defend it. But if he loses, probably his last fight. Regardless, it's his last shot at a title. This is everything that Dustin Poirier has worked for. He's been in the shot for the title twice, lost both times. Third time could be the charm here, but he is going up against the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Islam Makhachev. So it is a very tall task. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the retirement factor, and they hate taking fighters who are already talking like they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I do think it's a little different with Poirier, though. I think he's a guy who knows himself so well, and he's such a vet that even if he is thinking about retirement, he's still gonna be giving this thing 100% in training camp. He's not really gonna be acting like he's 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I don't really pay too much attention to that. I will
look into before you go on. I think if Poirier lost to BSD, I think that probably would have been his last fight too.
Yeah, I think so.
Either way, he went into his last fight. I think if he lost that, he was going to retire. He went in there and won. So take that as you will, but go on.
Yeah, no, and with the BSD fight, everybody now is talking about like, oh well, he was losing pretty badly, or he was getting taken down and ragdolled until he won. So, but yeah, the fact is that he won. It doesn't really matter what happened in the 10 minutes before he did it. Like he found a way to pull it out with his striking. And that's the way he fights. Like he's such a vet to where you make one split second mistake, Dustin Poirier is able to put the lights out and land the big shots. His boxing, everybody talks about how good it is, which it is, one of the best boxers in the UFC right now. If Islam comes out here and gets takedowns in the first couple of rounds, which I expect him to, Dustin Poirier is not out of the fight. We've seen Islam kind of slow down against Alexander Volkanovski in their first fight to where, he kind of left the door open for Volk to creep back in. And I think that's exactly something that could happen in this fight too. Like if Islam goes away from the takedowns halfway through the fight because he's trying to save energy for the later rounds, or he realizes he's not going to be able to finish him and he's, needs to conserve a little bit, that's exactly when Dustin Poirier is kind of going to turn up and give himself a shot to win the fight. Dustin Poirier did look a little tired against BSD, but, for as tired as he looked, he was able to pull out that kind of striking and combinations with enough power to put the guy out. I don't think he's got bad cardio. I think even if he is tired, he's a guy who's going to fight through it, and he's going to take opportunities and capitalize on them. Islam's the best in the world, though. to go out there and beat Islam Makhachev, you're going to have to be perfect. You're going to have to fight a perfect game plan all 25 minutes. I don't necessarily think he's going to go out there and get submitted by Islam in this fight because Dustin is good on the mat. But I do think Islam will probably get some control time in the early going. He will have his chances to even, land a big shot on the feet too, like he did against Volk. But man, as this fight goes on, Dustin Poirier, I just have a feeling is going to be able to creep back into it. And he's just such a vet to where if you leave the door open like you did against Volk, Dustin's got a little more pop than Volk. He hits a little bit harder. He throws with a little more ill intent. And some of those shots were hurting Islam Makhachev. So if you give those to Dustin, could be a different outcome. This is a perfect storybook ending for Dustin Poirier if he wins this fight. I feel like the UFC would love this because, you have Islam as the champion now. Even if Dustin Poirier goes out here and beats Islam or knocks him out, Islam's going to be champion again at some point. Like it's inevitable. He's that good. But the UFC would love nothing more than a Dustin Poirier dub here in front of everybody. Last fight of his or not. The storyline, it seems too good to be true. If he does it, it's one of the best stories. Touching gold in his last fight of his career after he's never done so before. Yeah, I think Islam should win the fight, but Dustin Poirier is a guy that just surprises you sometime, and he's got that factor to where, if you slip and make a split second mistake, he's gonna capitalize. So, taking Islam for the pick, but at plus 405, I think Dustin Poirier should be an automatic bet. If you ever see Dustin Poirier at plus 400, I think you got to have something on him.
Yeah, I mean the line is super wide, which is always tough to really think like, is it even worth betting on Islam at minus 600 or even higher? I think he's getting closer to like minus 700. So it does make you take a look at the Poirier side. And I just put out a full video breakdown of, how Poirier can look good on the feet against Islam and the holes that Islam has and how I think this is a bad matchup for Islam Makhachev on the feet against Dustin Poirier. So I'll save you the time here. If you're interested, check that out on my YouTube channel, HOF Picks. You can watch it there, but try to keep this a little bit shorter. Ultimately, it comes down to Islam Makhachev, I don't think is going to have success on the feet, but at the same time, it's like he might not even need to. Like Dustin Poirier is going to have so many holes, I think, in this fight on the feet as far as southpaw versus southpaw. Islam only really does well against these orthodox strikers, and Dustin Poirier historically has just destroyed southpaw strikers on the feet. But none of that matters if Islam's able to get takedowns, and in all reality, he's probably going to be able to get takedowns because he's got a 60% takedown accuracy. Poirier is really sitting at like 60% takedown defense. Like Islam's going to be able to get him to the ground if he elects to do so, and I would assume that he goes into there with the game plan that he's going to take him down because that's the path of least resistance. So, yeah, gun to my head, I'm going to take Islam Makhachev, but Dustin's going to have some moments, at least on the feet. Every round starts on the feet, and if he can keep it there, he's going to find a lot of success, and I don't think it's crazy to say that Dustin Poirier could knock out Islam Makhachev, and considering the odds, Dustin Poirier is at like plus 700, plus 750 by KO, plus 800, something like that. Those are wide lines. And that never really hurts to sprinkle on something like that. And then, on the Islam side, the most likely outcome is Islam by sub, which is like even money, which isn't bad. But I see this fight kind of going with Islam getting him down to the ground, tiring him out, not allowing Poirier into any type of rhythm on the feet. And then eventually he's able to kind of weather down Poirier to a point where he's either got to protect his neck or he's got to cover up from punches. And Islam probably finds a late finish. That's kind of what I'm being realistic. That's what I see. But Dustin Poirier, this is everything he's worked for. And he's a guy that he's never going to go into a fight looking for a way out. Like he's going to come to a fight every single time and try to take your head off. And of course, if you shoot a takedown, he's going to look for the gilly. So if he's shooting, if Islam's shooting for a takedown and Dustin goes for the gilly, he's always on the offense. Now, I don't think that's probably a very smart thing to do. Maybe try to stuff ahead, stay on your feet. But either way, he's always trying to finish the fight, and he is very dangerous. It is a very tough matchup for Poirier. These odds are a little insane. That's really why I'm kind of leaning towards a dog or pass. You know, like Islam's just too big of a favorite really to bet on at this point. So, yeah, gun to my head, I'm taking Islam Makhachev all day. But Dustin Poirier at big plus money in a spot where I think he can have a lot of success on the feet, it's worth a look. That's my breakdown.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. And, you know, what's interesting is everybody's talking about, like, Khabib came out and said that, you know, they're drilling for the guillotine. You know, Khabib was caught in it, and he knows what that feels like. He knows exactly, you know, how good it is. I think it's probably the closest Khabib's ever been to being finished, even though, you know, he was able to get out of it and stuff. Khabib panicked a little bit, and just shows you how good that choke is for Dustin Poirier. So, you know, they're going to be ready for it. I'm not surprised if they even bait him during the fight with it, just to get some easy takedowns for Islam. Yeah. But, you know, if it's better than Islam expects and he does go that route and gets caught in it, like, it's not out of the world that Dustin could just, you know, squeeze long enough to put him out. Yeah. And on the flip side, you know that Dustin has been watching Islam, and they're probably focusing in on his entries into the takedown and, you know, drilling shots that you could catch him with on his way in, you know, whatever. So, you know, both of these guys' strengths, the other ones are probably going to try to exploit, either to get an early takedown, land a big shot. I just think this is going to be a lot closer too than people expect. I think first half of the fight favors Islam. Second half, I think Dustin could pull out the dog and really make it gritty. Weird shit. I say this every time. Weird shit happens on these pay-per-view cards. We've seen it with, like, Leon Edwards beating Usman by head kick in the last minute. You know, the Max Holloway fight was insane. I can't think of, you know, Juliana Pena beating Amanda Nunes on a pay-per-view card for the title. Insane. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Dustin shocks the world here. And I can't wait to see this one, man.
Yeah, last thing that I didn't touch on is, like, Islam Makhachev's only fight that he went 5 rounds in, he didn't really look very good in the 5th round. Yeah. So if he can't get Dustin out of there in those first 3 rounds, first 4 rounds, Dustin Poirier might have to, you know, defend the grappling for the first 4 rounds. But if Islam starts to slow down, that's where Dustin Poirier can land the big shots and pull off a massive upset. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I can't wait to watch it to see how it plays out. Everyone's on the Islam side. It should seem like it's an easy win for him, but I would love to see a closer fight. And I do think we could see a little bit more of a closer fight. I just don't see how Islam goes in there and just runs through him round 1. Yeah, I think Dustin's a little bit too tough, too savvy, and he's just had too much experience. I don't think it's going to be that easy. But, you know, Islam is gun to your head pick 100%. So that's the breakdown, UFC 302. Appreciate you for watching. As always, you can get all of our bets in the HOF Picks premium membership. The link is down in the description below. Those were the picks, but if you want the bets, that's where you can get them. And stay tuned because we're going to be running a promotion for UFC 302 card. You can look out for that promotion at HOF Picks on IG. You can follow me on IG at HOF Picks. Where can they find you?
All social media is at the Parlay MMA.
Appreciate y'all for watching. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe. Till next time, the double leg. Sign out.